This is consumer engagement in the omnichannel world at its absolute best. So our format here is Peter and I will follow a Q&A format. One of us will interview, one of us will answer, and hopefully the dialogue will be so awesome that you'll want to come back week after week. Our topic for today is an exciting one in the industry, one that has been in the industry forever and really hasn't been solved. And hence, Peter will be the one that will answer how we can demystify consumer trust, authenticity for both brands and retailers. So without further ado, Peter, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody, and thank you, Sri. I'm Peter Bond. I'm the Vice President of Retail Strategy for Power Reviews. In that role, I help brands and consumer packaged goods manufacturers establish trust through authentic feedback coming from consumers in the form of ratings and reviews, questions and answers, authentically generated images and videos, all for the purpose of helping consumers make better business decisions on the path to purchase. I have a long history in loyalty and market research insights. I spent 3 years running the Extra Care loyalty program at CVS and their personalization of brands and categories. I spent 4 years at dunnhumby and 9 years at IRI. So I'm looking forward to being able to talk about this particular topic. Power Reviews itself is a platform of a series of authentic content solutions that brands and retailers can use, as I mentioned, to generate authentic feedback, share that with consumers, and ultimately allow them to make more informed purchase decisions by getting to the heart of issues, which is, do consumers actually trust the products that they're looking at buying? Sri, how about you?
Peter and I have, of course, known each other as friends, colleagues. We've gotten close to each other over the last couple of decades, and we actually met at IRI back in the days. I've been in CPG about 2.5 decades now. Yeah, better believe it, 2.5 decades, of which I started my career, of course, at IRI and then have been at PepsiCo, both for the beverage section, as well as for the snacking division down in Texas, Frito-Lay. The last 10 years, I've exclusively focused on digital and e-commerce, having started up e-commerce for Frito-Lay, then followed by Johnson & Johnson, consumer out in New Jersey, and then working on Revlon and the beauty industry's revolution in e-commerce and digital sales. And here we are today. So let's start this amazing topic of brand authenticity and along with retailers. And let's start with the first question for you, Peter.
I'm all ready, Sri.
Can you demystify for everyone, what is this word brand authenticity and why is it exceptionally important during these times when we are hit with this pandemic in the world?
All right. Well, brand authenticity is really about how consumers talk about the products that they've used or purchased, how they've interacted with the brands themselves if they've had questions. And it's really about generating trust in the product to make sure that they're making judicious investments. And brands can leverage that content in many different ways. They can obviously present it back to consumers on product pages, both on their site and on retailer sites, but they can amplify that brand authenticity through different channels that they own channels like social media or their CRM connections. At the end, it's about harnessing brand enthusiasm, because at the end, consumers are much more interested in the opinions of people who've actually used the product than they are how the brand talks about themselves.
You know, if I'm a brand or if I'm a retailer, Peter, I wouldn't know any other way other than to be authentic. So that leads me to the next one, which is, do you feel that brands and retailers are well on their way with authenticity, earning consumer trust? And do you feel the CPG industry is already evolved there overall?
Well, I sure hope so, Sri. Though I can think of something even less than a decade ago where I was talking with a brand manager who was begrudging the fact that all of these consumers were generating their own content, and she was trying to suppress it because she had her idea of the brand message. And in this day and age, that's a giant whack-a-mole game. If you think about how much content is being produced, spending time trying to stop that in favor of your own message, you're much better served by finding those who are talking well about your brand and helping to amplify that. Leverage what's already being connected and being able to do that. I think back to a particular story that's relevant. I saw an interview on TV from a brand manager who was talking about cotton swabs. And they would talk about all the applications except for what people really use cotton swabs for, which is to clean their ear canals. And I understand there are some legal implications, and nor would I ever tell that brand manager that you should disregard the legal concerns. But brand authenticity is about knowing what people are really using the cotton swab for. And if you are not true to that, well, guess what? Your consumers are going to figure that out.
You know, CPG at its best, man. That's the way I would classify that. But you said a little bit about when someone's saying something good about your brand, then to follow up. What happens if where you notice something out there that you're not so thrilled about as a brand in terms of consumer feedback? You just leave it alone? What do you do? This example you just gave of the cotton swab kind of reminds me that everything matters. Doesn't every single review, every single comment, every single question from a consumer, doesn't a brand have to be on top of it, or a retailer?
Yeah, that's a good question. So from a brand perspective, there's a big difference between a brand's ability to answer that and a retailer's ability. Because as you know, Sri, a brand has a very narrow focus, but has a deep understanding and knowledge about their products, whereas a retailer is very broad. They sell many different categories, and so that expertise. So if I'm a brand, first and foremost, I am making myself available to my consumers through my site and other mechanisms, where if they have questions, they can ask them, and I will have a subject matter expert designated to be able to respond to that. But if a negative review comes in, at a minimum, brands should be responding to every negative review to show, one, that they are responsive, two, that they care, and three, that they actually want to resolve the issue. Because our studies have actually found that for brands that respond to negative reviews and work to resolve that, we make sure at Power Reviews that that negative review doesn't stand alone, that the brand can respond to it and display the answer. And then we go back and make sure that the consumer who wrote it has a chance to append it if their issue was resolved. Other people going to that site will see that interaction. That again builds trust that someone's listening and they care about it. As for retailers, it's a bit of a different story. If a question comes in from a product, the best thing a retailer can do is work with a provider on their platform that can build a system that leverages their vendors, their suppliers, identifies subject matter experts for the product portfolio of that vendor. And when a question comes in, that question is immediately routed to the subject matter expert. And they should, within 24, 48 hours, respond to that. The question and the answer appear on the site. That is the best way for retailers to do that. Other retailers do it differently. Amazon typically sources people who've already purchased the product to answer the question. But if you really want the best possible answer, sourcing your vendors for subject matter experts are the best way to address that.
You know, what I'm hearing from you is you're alluding to how brands and retailers can actually seek authentic content. So can you dive a little bit into, like, what are the different types? Like, is it only reviews? Are there other mechanisms to seek authentic content?
Sure. So obviously, the one that we're all familiar with are product ratings and reviews. We have them in things we buy, in the restaurant.
Forever. Yeah.
All of that is very standard. But beyond that, I did already mention one, which are questions and answers. Afford your consumers an opportunity to ask questions before they've made a purchase. And the sooner you answer it, the sooner they're going to make the purchase decision. Let's not forget, increasingly, the visual element of this, which is request that they generate images and videos. And that can either be as part of a rating or review or independently. A lot of brands will use social media to ask their enthusiasts who follow them to generate content for a social media hashtag or an @mention campaign. All of that is really great. And part of what you want to do as a brand is have a methodology or a platform like we have at Power Reviews, where if a brand manager identifies content that's been authentically created, being able to, with a click or two of a button, start in motion the process to gain the rights of that content to re-amplify through your own channels. So that's really where brand managers are probably better off, spending their time in a curated manner, being able to see how consumers are sharing images and videos, and then gaining the rights to be able to distribute it. Really, this is, again, about brands asking their enthusiastic fans to talk about their brands authentically. How does an alcohol company want to talk about that? I'm talking with one right now about generating a social media campaign on quarantine cocktails. Seems like a very appropriate thing to do since we're all sitting at home.
I don't know about you, Peter, but I've been making my quarantine cocktail is red sangria. What's yours?
And mine's appearing a little earlier than in the day than it used to.
So is mine, man. Gotta be honest. But Peter, in all of that, I did not hear you mention a buzzword in the industry in CPG and marketing that many marketers chase, and that is influencers. Is an influencer strategy a must-have? Are influencers regarded as authentic? Like, can you just demystify what's going on with influencers, and should brands be thinking of them and how important they are?
That's a very good question, Sri. And let's think about this as a range of different types of influencers. On the top end, it's someone like Kim Kardashian, right? She has a tremendous following, a large
She's known
audience.
to have broken the internet someday.
And then from there, it goes from there to a lesser celebrity influencer who may do paid Vine or videos on YouTube. That
I hear even Amazon has its own influencer system now. Is that true?
They absolutely do. They have a Vine program that they use to generate ratings and reviews and content for brands that's unique to Amazon. And then you work your way down the line to what we call an everyday influencer. Now, an everyday influencer is basically you or me or our spouse, our cousin, the person in line behind us at the grocery store when we used to go to the grocery store. But those are people that typically have a couple of hundred followers. They're not getting paid to do anything, but oftentimes they like to talk about the brands and products that they use. The difference between the two when it comes to authenticity is a celebrity, like, if you think about it, I'll give you another example. You may be familiar with a commercial that appeared during the Super Bowl. It was called Smart Park by Hyundai. It was a new parking mechanism.
Yep.
You had a couple of celebrities talking in very thick Boston accents. I'm not going to do my Boston accent.
Park your car.
I knew you'd go there. I just knew you'd go there.
Bam.
But let's be honest. Who thinks that Chris Evans, who thinks Captain America drives a Hyundai? That's not. Those are influencers that create awareness. They don't create trust. Trust is created by authenticity. And authenticity is someone who may have received a sample or didn't receive a sample but tried the product and chose to just write a review organically. You'd be amazed at how many more people are willing to trust a group of people that they know, that are part of their family, that are their neighbors, their coworker. That's what actually generates trust, and that's what moves the needle with brands. Celebrities will get you a lot of awareness. They just won't get you trust.
I'm tempted to ask you then, Peter, in this world where you've referred to micro-influencers, macro-influencers, Vine reviews on Amazon, we've talked about ratings and reviews now for a while. How does a brand ever measure, like, what are the metrics to know if you're authentic, if you're doing the right thing, and you're doing the right thing towards what I believe is a responsibility in the industry, which is deliver good product at good quality and value to the consumer? How do you measure this authenticity?
Yeah, let me first mention the fact that that if you're going to collect content in an organized way, you want to make sure that the platform or the partner that you choose deals with this issue of authenticity. Some of it is automation, fraud detection for bad IP addresses, profanity filters, other things like that. But there's also this human moderation element, because you want to make sure that whatever content is shared is both relevant and appropriate. Relevant means if you're talking about a product, it's about the product. It's not, hey, my delivery arrived 5 days late and the package was soaking wet because you left it on the porch in the rain. That's not about the product. That's really about the delivery service. The second one is appropriateness. We deal with pharmaceutical companies. We deal with alcohol companies. The last thing an alcohol client wants is a video being posted of a group of underage children overindulging on alcohol. So part of what you need to do is make sure that the content is moderated. Once you've been able to do that, the next steps are, okay, how am I going to measure? What are the key things I need to think about? From a purely ratings and review perspective, I'm mostly concerned about what's my average rating? And most people, and there's really interesting, many brands come to me and say, how do I keep low rated reviews from reaching consumers? And that's actually a very bad strategy.
Oh boy, that's actually happening, huh?
Oh yeah, and some platforms make it a lot easier for brands to completely suppress low rated reviews. Our research that we've done with Northwestern University indicates very clearly that the actual target range for an average rating is somewhere between 4.2 and 4.7. And that's simply because nobody believes a product that has pure 5-star reviews. They always look to see what's
Neither would I, Peter.
Yeah. So first, it's probably, you want to be able to show that. And what you want to be able to show is back to what I said earlier, which is respond to those reviews. Show that you actually tried to address them, because that's going to make the consumer much more trusting, because that's authentic feedback. Second of all, you want to make sure you have a lot of volume. I often get asked, how many reviews do I need? It depends on the value of the item. Higher value purchases like televisions typically need a lot more reviews than, say, a loaf of bread. But generally speaking, I'd say if you've got 50 reviews, our research says that most consumers think it's not Shree's younger child sitting in the basement eating Cheetos, pounding out the same review 100 times over. Not that I would ever think that you would get them to do that, Shree.
No chance. They're 14 and 20, so they already don't listen to me. But there was something very important that you said about the quality of a review and more the content of the review. You were giving the example of how when someone receives the package, unfortunately sitting in the porch in the rain, a consumer may open the package. All reviews are kind of associated with a product SKU or a product detail page. So what can retailers do, or what are retailers doing to ensure that the quality of the content that the consumer actually puts in is authentic towards the SKU versus complaining about a delivery service in that very example you gave? Because often, it often happens when I browse and look at reviews, I find this problem to be very prevalent even today.
Yeah, so for a retailer, they need to establish, for most retailers, other than Amazon, that are displaying a copious amount of content, they're typically syndicating that content from brands through platforms like Power Reviews. They need to be focused on ensuring that the moderation guidelines of authenticity that they want for their site are being met by the platform providers that are sharing content with them from the brand. So that end,
so I want to dive into that a little bit with you, right?
Sure.
So clearly most retailers, if we leave the Amazon ecosystem alone, most retailers are somewhat today dependent on the brands working with a platform provider to push reviews over into the ecosystem, into their own retail.com ecosystems. So isn't this burden, or isn't this, I don't want to call it a burden, isn't this opportunity really for brands to ensure they have amazing workflows, there's checks and balances, so that every review is treated equally, and as well as when they're talking about a packaging issue or a delivery issue versus a product, that there's a way to call it out?
Yeah, so that's where the moderation comes in. If you find that there are reviews that are appearing that are not relevant, then you should be able to unpublish those reviews. What you shouldn't be able to do is just as a blanket capability say, I don't want any 2 or 1-star reviews to appear.
Oh, that would be terrible,
You're
Peter.
the brand to act inauthentically. But think about videos, right? Do you know what the most commonly uploaded image is when a review is submitted? It's a selfie. It's a selfie. People actually think that, whoa, oh, you want to see me, the person who wrote the review. Well, thank you. It's very nice that you let us know what you look like. But if it doesn't have an image of the product in it and isn't really showing the functionality of that product, then that's a wasted image. So you need to make sure that the content is appropriate for what you're trying to do. And that's where you don't, if you're using a platform that leaves the moderation up to you as a brand, then that's a real question. And that's the kind of content that I work with a lot of brands that may not use our platform, but they want to share content to retailers in our network. When I work with them, I identify what's the source of the content and what type of moderation guidelines are put in place. If there are none, then what we have to do is, before it reaches the retailer, we have to moderate all the content and make sure that it meets their guidelines and our guidelines. Because at the end of the day, the retailers want their consumers to be confident that the content that's being presented to them, any content,
absolutely,
not just ratings, reviews or images,
yep,
the nutritional information, everything else is as authentic and correct as possible.
You know, you're tempting me, Peter, with what you said, to ask you a kind of like a follow-up to that, which is, so in this world, which sounds like there are many options of how content can be generated, what is the brand's most powerful way, other than a ratings and reviews, or even within the ratings and reviews ecosystem? What can a brand do to ensure that it is doing its due diligence in generating authentic, quality content?
Sure. So let's think about all the assets that they do own that allow them to connect with consumers, right? Social media. We have a lot of our clients who use Instagram and Facebook, sure, in particular, to solicit reviews from their brand enthusiasts. Many of them have their own CRM database. We just onboarded a new brand that had a fairly extensive CRM database they sent out a monthly newsletter to. Before we even deployed our technology on their site, we established some standalone writer review pages with the ability to attach images and videos. And they simply emailed out a link to their audience, didn't provide them any incentive, didn't do anything. They got 1,000 reviews in 2 days. It cost them nothing to do that. Very efficient way to do this. But social media, CRM, another one is, everybody has this wonderful brand real estate. It's called a package. And not everybody, and particularly brands that don't have direct-to-consumer e-commerce, the likelihood that someone's going to go to your website and write a review on a product page organically is fairly nominal. But if you actually put a QR code on the outside of your package asking for feedback, now the QR code readers are built into every camera app on a smartphone. All you have to do is hover your camera over, takes you
literally just point the camera and you're done, aren't you?
Pardon me?
Literally just point the camera to the QR code and boom, you get to it.
Hover over it. You don't have to click anything. A link will appear. You click on the link. It takes you to the writer review page. The great thing about this, for that, Sri, is it gets into the hands of so many people who would normally never even think about doing it. And it's a great opportunity. What does it cost you? It costs nothing to create a QR code. It costs you the redesign of your package the next time you're doing an update, or you just put a sticker on it.
Innovation cycle.
Yeah, I'm standing here in a very secret barrel room of a bourbon distillery, as you can see. We work with a client who at their tasting room at their distillery on the Bourbon Trail, they'll hand out little business cards that have QR codes on them that ask people who just took a tasting to write a review. What a great way to do it.
My humble opinion, Peter, the progressive brands are doing that already today. The ones that have been around for a century still haven't progressed enough to do it. But I sincerely hope this last 4-6 weeks is training brands how to operate without being reliant only on an in-store model, and how to communicate and understand empathy for the consumer. But you talked about the CRM example of how 2,000 reviews were created very quickly. So what are mechanisms that, and you also referred to retailers really somewhat depend on brands for the authentic quality content. what are some mechanisms or avenues for retailers to be able to do this on their own outside of the Amazon ecosystem?
Well, that's a really good question, and where it pertains the most to retailers is, I think, obviously I came from a consumer packaged goods and a grocery space. There's one brand that they'll never get syndicated ratings and reviews for, and that's their own private label brand.
Sure.
Because they're the only one who sells it. The biggest issue that private label faces in terms of penetration and conversion from national brand is this issue of quality, right? Because I don't really care how much you discount a roll of paper towel, whether it's 5% or 95%. If the minute it touches water and it dissolves, I'll never buy that product. So ratings and reviews in particular are extremely helpful to retailers because it cuts to the heart of the quality issue and lets someone know that, hey, there are 200 or 300 other people that tried my private label product, and you know what? They all loved it. You can read all their reviews. That will break down. So from their standpoint, where they sit on tremendous data assets are their own loyalty data. So think about grocery retailers that have 90+% of their transactions household identifiable. Club stores, 100% household identifiable. Chain drug is somewhere north of 75. Yep. Taking the order feeds from that and just simply requesting via email for verified email addresses you have to write reviews on those products is an incredibly powerful mechanism, because you also can, your platform should be badging all of those reviews as having been sourced from a verified buyer. Again, inserting as much trust and authenticity. So we recently worked with a client of ours to test this out. And it was phenomenal. We ended up driving their coverage of ratings and reviews to north of 90% of their assortment, where at least 30% had 100 or more reviews. And what happened? In the subsequent months after adding all of this content, now the items are badged as top rated. They're appearing in the search results.
Not surprised.
They've seen e-commerce sales of their private label grow more than 50%. 50! Can you imagine why a retailer would want to walk away from that? Think about that. Now, we know that with private labels shifting from national brands, there's going to be a slight dip in the top line because private label sells at a discount. But my God, the margin that they make.
I'm not surprised, Peter. What you're alluding to here is the age-old phenomenon that CPG is anchored to a bunch of causal inputs. It used to be display, temporary price reduction, things of that nature. I think one of the things we should, in the industry, very responsibly discuss as a causal metric is ratings and reviews and what the roles and responsibilities of retailers and manufacturers are. And I think we have ways to go just listening to your discussion. But because I do feel strongly, and I think we both agree that it is a metric in causals to be measured, monitored, etc., and the industry needs to evolve there, I think we need to do justice today. And if you can help us understand or demystify what are the components of an authentic review, like how do you break this down? What are the different pieces? Is it just 4.6 stars? Is that what you look out for? Like, or you look out 800 reviews? Like, can you break it down for us?
Sure. So I can talk about the fact that the kind of things that you want to collect and then what is going to make it most relevant and authentic to the consumer. First and foremost, everyone's used to the star rating and typically a subject or a header and then the body of the content. That's kind of the table stakes. If you're an apparel company, your biggest concern is returns. So adding custom questions to the content collection about, does this product fit true to size? Does it fit a little big? Does it fit a little small? That's going to help consumers make the decision about exactly what size. Because I can tell you when I buy shirts, the fit is different from brand to brand, and you only learn over time how that brand does it. If you can help them ahead of time, you're going to dramatically reduce your returns, and that means you're going to save money. So thinking about things like that, or if I keep using this alcohol example, I want to know, did someone who write this, are they a cocktail connoisseur? Are they a newbie? What is it? All of this is about collecting answers so that you can filter the results find someone who is like you and answer the more detailed questions you want. So where we work with brands is about making sure that we understand the vertical they're in, and we provide best-in-class counsel as to what are the types of questions that they want to ask that's going to make it easier for consumers to understand their product and accelerate the path to purchase.
So who's awesome at this? Which brands, which retailers? You know, you've obviously worked with a bunch of brands and doing this and retailers. Who's doing this right? Who's headed in the right direction?
So I'll be transparent about when I mention a client of mine, but I'll tell you one that's really good in a retailer that's not only good at using content, but collecting their own content, and that's actually Ulta. So Ulta Beauty is a client of ours. They use our platform. They are so engaging in collecting ratings and reviews from people who purchase products at their stores that they collect hundreds and thousands of reviews, and that enables them to display that content in a unique and advantageous way. They have a rule of thumb that once there are 500 reviews of a product on the site, the default display for ratings and reviews shifts from all reviews to just reviews that were written on Ulta.com. They firmly believe that their consumers want to see reviews from people that also shop at Ulta. And so as you start to build that up and you have that deep content asset, then you have that opportunity. Now, consumers can go and change the display back to look at all reviews, but when it's tagged as having been a review coming from Ulta.com, they believe it accelerates the trust and it means more to their consumers, and that's how they do it. Other ones, totally, also in the beauty space, not a client of mine, for our platform, but a client of ours for our sampling community, is L'Oreal. L'Oreal is, and you know who they are from your prior role, but L'Oreal spends a lot of time generating authentic content through our sampling program. Power Reviews has a community of over 1 million everyday influencers. Everyday influencers that can be leveraged through a series of surveys and qualifications and demographics to fit the needs of a brand. We send samples to those brands, either fulfill them or give them coupons that they can pick them up at the store. That's particularly helpful for perishable items that don't ship very well. But they use that content and we collect the authentic review. The great thing about that type of community is it's really helpful because it generates richer content. They typically write longer reviews. They generate better pictures. It's more meaningful information than just, wow, that tastes great. And that particular community is great. And then what we end up doing is we badge that content when we share it to a retailer as having been sourced from a sampling campaign. So again, it's about establishing that authenticity so that the consumer who's reading it can judge it accordingly.
So Peter, I can't thank you enough for your insights on authenticity, brand authenticity, and content authenticity here for retailers as well. You know, Peter and I don't intend here to be Wall Street analysts or detailed forecasters or predictors of the future, but we both have enjoyed our conversations over the year on the progression of the CPG industry, and all the sentiments we put out here are so that our collective responsibility to the industry is to the consumer, quality product at the value that they deserve, and all our sentiments come from that space. And we hope you enjoyed this dialogue. You can also get the long format article version if you prefer reading to watching the video in this post. So please be sure to check it out as well. And we'll be back soon with another topic of interest. And we look forward to speaking with all of you, engaging. Please share comments as you want to engage with us, and we'll be more than happy to answer it back for you. And wherever you all are in the world watching this and reading the article, please stay safe. Life will return to normalcy.